Behind every Grammy, every Super Bowl stage, every spectacle, Lady Gaga was carrying something the world wasn't meant to see. At 19, a music producer sexually assaulted Stefani Germanotta. What followed was a psychotic break, years of PTSD, fibromyalgia that turned her body into a prison, and a world tour cut short by hip surgery. The untold journey from that broken young woman to one of the most powerful artists alive was never about fame. It was about forging pain into authenticity and authenticity into triumph. That story begins with a 4-year-old girl sitting down at a piano. Stefani Joanne Angelina Germanotta entered the world in Manhattan in March 1986, the first child of Cynthia and Joe Germanotta. Their apartment on the Upper West Side was filled with the hum of city life, but inside, the rhythm that mattered most came from the family piano. At just 4 years old, Stefani's hands began to find the keys, not as a prodigy, but as a child, learning that discipline could be an act of love. Her mother, Cynthia, believed in the power of routine and encouragement, sitting beside her daughter as she practiced scales and simple melodies, day after day. Joe, who built his own business from the ground up, taught Stefani that work mattered more than wishing. He treated her musical training with the same seriousness as his own career, expecting effort and commitment, not just talent. Music was woven into the fabric of their home. The piano became a confidant, a place where Stefani could pour her feelings before she had the words to explain them. By 13, she had written her first full ballad, shaping raw emotion into melody. This was not a story of instant genius, but of repetition, sweat, and a growing sense that art could hold everything she felt. In these early years, before the costumes and the crowds, Stefani was already building something lasting, a sense of self forged in the quiet discipline of practice, the steady presence of family, and the belief that real artistry is earned, not inherited. At 11, Stefani Germanotta walked through the doors of the Convent of the Sacred Heart, her uniform pressed, her notebooks ready, but already feeling out of place. The halls of the private school promised tradition and safety, yet for Stefani, they quickly became a proving ground for something far harder than academics. Classmates picked at her differences, her dark hair, her teeth, the way she carried herself. The nickname, Rabbit Teeth, echoed in the lunchroom, and the message was clear. She did not belong. Each day brought a new reminder that the world could be cruel to those who stood out. The laughter and whispers chipped away at her self-worth, and the hunger for acceptance grew sharp. Shame crept in quietly, turning meals into battlegrounds. Bulimia became both punishment and escape, a desperate attempt to shrink herself until the ridicule might stop. In interviews years later, Gaga would admit that the fight with food began in these years, fueled by a need for control in a world that offered none. Loneliness settled in, heavy and persistent. Friends were scarce, trust was brittle. But music, always music, remained. The piano, the notebooks filled with lyrics, the roles in school plays. These became lifelines, the only places she could breathe freely. Songwriting was no longer just an exercise, it was survival. On stage, she could shed the shame and become someone powerful, if only for a few minutes. In the quiet after applause, the pain returned, but so did the resolve. The wounds of adolescence shaped her, teaching her that the price of being different could be steep, but that art could be a refuge when the world refused to offer one. At 17, Stefani Germanotta walked into the halls of NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, carrying the weight of her family's hopes and her own restless ambition. The program at CAPI 21 offered structure and prestige, but inside, she felt the walls closing in. 3 semesters in, the choice became clear: stay the course or step into the unknown. In 2005, she left NYU behind, not as an act of defeat, but as a declaration that her voice could not be contained by anyone else's curriculum. Her parents, stunned but loyal, gave her a year, 1 year to prove that her leap was not a fall. Manhattan's small clubs became her classroom. Nights at the bitter end and the Lower East Side's open mics tested her stamina and sharpened her sense of self. She formed the Stefani Germanotta band, booking gigs, writing original songs, and learning to command a stage with nothing but raw conviction and a keyboard. The city's noise became her soundtrack. Each performance was a gamble. Every empty room a lesson in humility and grit. Beyond her own shows, she wrote for others, most notably Britney Spears, contributing to tracks that would reach millions before her own name ever did. This was not the easy path. It was a wager on authenticity, a bet that the world would one day hear what she already knew. Her story was worth the risk. At 19, Stefani Germanotta faced a violation that would shadow every part of her future. A music producer, wielding his power over her career, demanded obedience and threatened to destroy her work if she refused. The assault left her pregnant and alone, dropped on a street corner outside her parents' home. In the weeks that followed, her body turned against her. She vomited for days, numb and unable to process the pain. The trauma didn't end with the physical ordeal. It fractured her sense of safety, leaving her mind caught between panic and emptiness. The aftermath brought a kind of darkness that crept into every corner of her life. She described a psychotic break, paranoia, terror, and a sense that her own thoughts had become foreign. The diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder came later, but the symptoms were immediate. Flashes of memory, whole-body spasms, chronic pain that doctors could not explain. Anxiety became a constant companion. Some days, depression pinned her to the bed. Other days, the urge to harm herself felt like the only way to regain control of a body that no longer felt like her own. Music, once a refuge, became a battleground. She doubted her talent, lost faith in her voice, and questioned whether she could ever trust herself or anyone else again. The world outside saw only the ambition, the drive, the hunger to perform. Inside, she fought to survive each day. Survival was not clean or heroic. It was stubborn, messy, and fraught with setbacks. But in the act of enduring, she began to build the armor that would later become both her shield and her stage. The decision to keep going was not a triumph, but a refusal to let the worst thing that happened to her become the end of her story. Electric nights in downtown Manhattan turned into a crucible for reinvention. Inside the feverish energy of the Lower East Side, Stefani Germanotta stepped onto stages where the rules bent and broke under the weight of pure audacity. Here, the persona of Lady Gaga was not stitched together as a disguise, but forged as a living, breathing answer to every wound and every slight. The underground scene gave her permission to be outrageous, to turn vulnerability into spectacle, to wear pain like armor and truth like a neon badge. Lady Starlight, born Colleen Martin, became more than a partner. She was a catalyst. Their collaborations at the Slipper Room and on the Starlight Review Tour blurred the lines between DJ set, performance art, and rock show. Together, they built shows that were equal parts chaos and choreography, mixing glam metal vinyl with theatrical pop and wild costumes. Starlight's fearless style and unfiltered presence unlocked something in Gaga, showing her that performance could be both shield and sword. On those small stages, authenticity stopped meaning plainness and started meaning unmistakable honesty. There was no hiding. Every sequin, every scream, every act of excess was a declaration of ownership over her story. The persona was not a mask to hide behind, but a structure to survive within. Shame became authorship. The crowd's gaze, once a threat, became fuel. Each night, Gaga learned to control the narrative, to turn private damage into public art. In the underground, she found the freedom to be theatrical without apology, and the courage to be seen on her own terms, revealing not just a character, but the raw, unbreakable core that would define everything to come. A new kind of pop music began to pulse out of studio speakers in 2008, and it carried the unmistakable signature of Stefani Germanotta, now Lady Gaga. Before her own name filled headlines, she was penning hooks for artists like Britney Spears. writing with a sharpness that set her apart from the assembly line of young songwriters. But it was the partnership with Red One, the Moroccan-Swedish producer, that would fuse her raw ideas into something electric. In marathon sessions, they built songs that didn't just chase trends, they created them. The sound was bold, synthetic, and instantly addictive, but the lyrics carried the grit and defiance of someone who had spent years fighting to be heard. The Fame, released in August 2008, wasn't just an album, it was a manifesto. Gaga's vision of celebrity was both a playground and a critique, turning ambition into art. Just Dance hit the airwaves first, its chorus a lifeline for anyone who'd ever felt invisible. The track climbed, slowly at first, then all at once, until it reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in January 2009. Poker Face followed, spinning tales of power and disguise over a beat that throbbed in every club from New York to Tokyo. None of this diluted her strangeness. If anything, the spotlight magnified it. Outrageous costumes, lightning bolt makeup, and a sense of theater became inseparable from the music itself. Her visual identity was not a mask, but an extension of the story she was telling, one where pain and spectacle could coexist. In less than a year, Gaga went from late-night gigs in downtown bars to dominating global charts. The world had never seen or heard anything like her, and she refused to become smaller just because the stage had grown. The release of the Fame monster in late 2009 brought a new kind of honesty to the surface. Beneath the neon beats and futuristic hooks, the lyrics ran darker and deeper, tracing the lines of fear, heartbreak, and longing that fame could not erase. Bad Romance exploded across the world, its chorus both a battle cry and a confession. The song's twisted love story, delivered with raw, almost operatic force, gave voice to everything messy and beautiful about wanting to be seen and loved for who you really are. It was more than a hit, it became a signature, a mirror for millions who recognized their own outsider hearts in its drama. Around Gaga, something unexpected began to happen. Fans started calling themselves Little Monsters, a name that turned shame into solidarity. The term wasn't just a label, it was an invitation. For every kid who'd been mocked for their clothes or their dreams, for every adult who still felt like a misfit, Gaga's music became a shelter. Her concerts felt less like shows and more like gatherings of a chosen family, a safe place to be loud, strange, or vulnerable without apology. Fashion for Gaga became a language, sometimes wild, sometimes severe, always intentional. Outfits made of bubbles or lace, masks and towering shoes. Each look was a way to say, difference is not danger, it's possibility. The monster, once a figure of fear, now offered protection. In her world, the things that made you weird could also make you brave. The stage was no longer just hers, it belonged to everyone who needed a place to belong. Fame became a weapon in Lady Gaga's hands, but not the kind that silences or divides. With the release of Born This Way in 2011, she broadcast her own scars as a rallying cry. The song's message was blunt and unapologetic. Every difference, every wound, every part of you that the world once called wrong is something to defend, not erase. It was more than a pop anthem. It was a blueprint for self-acceptance, rooted in the pain of being told you don't belong. On stage and in interviews, Gaga refused to shrink into celebrity. Instead, she provoked, challenged, and insisted on visibility. The infamous meat dress at the MTV Video Music Awards in 2010 wasn't just shock for its own sake. Gaga explained it as a protest against the military's "don't ask, don't tell" policy, a demand to see the bodies and lives behind every political decision. She spoke out against discrimination, whether for sexuality, gender, race, or mental health, using her global reach to force the conversation where it couldn't be ignored. Activism and performance fused into a single identity. In 2012, she and her mother launched the Born This Way Foundation, aiming to build a kinder, braver world for young people. The foundation's work on mental health, anti-bullying, and youth empowerment made her message tangible. Fame was no longer just a spotlight, it became a shield for others and a challenge to anyone who tried to dictate the limits of belonging. In Gaga's world, authenticity was no longer a risk, it was a right. Years of commanding the stage caught up with her body in a way that no amount of fame could shear willpower. In February 2013, Lady Gaga was forced to cancel the remainder of the Born This Way ball after doctors discovered a labral tear in her right hip. The pain had been mounting for months, masked by adrenaline and sheer willpower, until it became impossible to ignore. Surgery and months of rehabilitation followed, leaving her sidelined while the world speculated. Some called it weakness, others accused her of exaggeration, but beneath the headlines was a woman learning the limits of her own endurance. The story did not end with recovery. In 2017, Gaga revealed she was living with fibromyalgia, a chronic pain disorder that brings unpredictable flare-ups, exhaustion, and days when even getting out of bed is a victory. The Netflix documentary 5'2" captured the reality: doctor visits, medication routines, and the daily uncertainty of how her body would respond. Managing pain became a routine, not a moral failing. Yet public misunderstanding added another layer of struggle, as if invisible suffering required proof. For Gaga, the hardest part was not just the pain, but being misread while in pain, fighting to be seen as more than her diagnosis, and refusing to let her illness define her worth. Jazz demanded a different kind of honesty. When Lady Gaga stepped into the studio with Tony Bennett, she left behind the armor of spectacle and leaned into the discipline of craft. Their first recording together, "The Lady is a Tramp," paired her restless energy with Bennett's steady calm, a meeting of generations rooted in mutual respect. For Gaga, jazz was a test. The music had no patience for gimmicks. Each note required focus, timing, and trust in the material. Tony Bennett, with his decades of experience, offered guidance that was gentle but unwavering. He became a mentor, showing her that greatness comes from restraint as much as from risk. In the quiet of those sessions, Gaga rediscovered something she thought fame had taken away: the simple joy of singing for the sake of the song. The Cheek to Cheek album followed, and with it, a new confidence built on discipline rather than defiance. She learned to win over audiences not with shock, but with sincerity. Acting soon called to her as well, first through roles like the Countess in American Horror Story. Here, emotion had to be channeled without the safety of outlandish costumes. Each performance was an exercise in vulnerability, demanding presence rather than persona. This period was not about chasing headlines or reinventing for applause. It was about healing through steady work and finding peace in the rigor of her craft. For the first time in years, Gaga allowed herself to rebuild slowly, one song, one scene, one honest moment at a time. On the set of A Star Is Born, Stefani Germanotta stepped into the light not as Lady Gaga, but as herself, stripped of the costumes, the wigs, and the armor that had long protected her. Bradley Cooper, both director and co-star, insisted she perform barefaced, her hair its natural color, her voice unfiltered. The story she told on screen was achingly familiar: a woman with a gift, battered by doubt, searching for the courage to be seen. Each scene blurred the line between role and reality, as if the camera was capturing not just a character, but the raw heart of the artist behind the fame. Shallow was born from this place of honesty. The song did not soar because it was perfect. It soared because it was real, carrying years of longing and pain in every note. When the Academy Award was announced, the applause felt like something deeper than industry recognition. It was a moment when vulnerability was no longer a wound, but a source of power. On that stage, Oscar in hand, Stefani reclaimed the self she had fought so hard to protect. For the first time, her greatest validation arrived not through spectacle, but through the simple, luminous act of being truly seen. In a world still punishing vulnerability, Gaga's fight to exist as herself is both rare and necessary. Today, millions quietly carry invisible wounds. Her music and advocacy offer real solace, not just spectacle. The courage to reclaim your story remains the most radical act. Authenticity, hard-won, is the true measure of triumph. What would it mean if we all dared to live that honestly? Share your thoughts below.